The original Eye of the Beholder was a breakthrough success when it released, massively improving on the formula of dungeon crawlers of the time, adding improved visuals, increased interactability, and intuitive gameplay, all housed in the popular Advanced Dungeons & Dragons rule set. It was a revolutionary step forward, and when Eye of the Beholder 2 released, that step forward turned into a leap. Probably standing as one of the most accessible and beloved games released in the real-time dungeon crawling genre to date. However, the developers of these first two games, Westwood Studios, would not develop the third. They instead went on to develop their own series in Lands of Lore, while SSI, the publisher for the first two games, was left holding the rights to Eye of the Beholder. Never one to waste an IP, SSI took on the task of developing the third game in-house, and while it wasn't a total flop, many felt it was a poor send-off for the beloved series. However, as someone that's never played it, I wanted to try it personally before passing judgment. Just taking the intro cinematic into account, I certainly feel those same goosebumps I felt from Eye of the Beholder 2's intro cinematic. Sound and visuals are on point, so maybe this game doesn't deserve the reputation it got. Either way, I hope you'll join me for a review that is long overdue, both in general and for my channel specifically.
It's been 8 months since you played Eye of the Beholder 2. About time you finish a series.
Right you are, Editing Cat. Myth Drannor isn't going to explore itself. Let's get to it. The first thing you may notice from the footage here is that this game looks different than its predecessors. That's because despite the similarities in gameplay, this third installment is actually running on its own unique game engine, not the original engine used to make the first two games. I can't tell you the exact reason why they changed out the engine, but this new one does make some very minor changes to how things work. First and foremost, what you may have already noticed is that it looks significantly worse than the first two games. Probably a polarizing statement for some, but to me this last entry in the series has a much worse look overall. The visuals are a lot more pixelated, the color palette is much more washed out, and perhaps worst of all, there is significantly less variety to the dungeon tile sets. One benefit I will give this game is that it does have some really nice pixel art for cutscenes and character interactions. The talking to a still NPC cutout from the original is completely gone. And outdoor spaces, when you do get to see them, tend to stand out in a series that has generally confined the player to dark and dingy indoor spaces. Which is great, but as 75% of this game takes place indoors, it might have been nice to have a bit more variety in the indoor environments. Eye of the Beholder was always a series that was applauded for its graphics, and this felt like a step back. Once again, this game did not release with any auto-mapping whatsoever. You were expected to make your own maps or buy the clue book. Much like the prior two re-releases, this Steam version comes equipped with the All-Seeing Eye built in, a mod that allows auto-mapping. Sadly, with the change of engine, the auto-map has changed as well, and not for the better. Whereas this mod included lots of options for what to display in the first two games, here it pretty well just maps out the space with little extra. I looked into this, and the main reason I can find that it's so different is just that the creator didn't put as much time into porting this over into the new engine. And that's totally fair. Eye of the Beholder 3 is a much less played game, and at a certain point it's probably not worth what I assume is hours of work for a product that's only going to be seen by a very select few. It gets the job done, Nothing but love for people who continue to improve these games even 30 years later. This is as good a time as any to make a more general statement on retro games, that as much as I absolutely adore these older titles, little quality of life additions like this are an across-the-board improvement as far as I'm concerned. If there are purists out there listening, and you still want to go through and manually map, more power to you. For me, I won't go so far as to say I don't have the patience for it, but I definitely prefer a good auto map. There are only so many hours in the day. So long as quality of life features are optional and non-intrusive, I'm a big supporter of being able to add a touch of modern convenience to these titles. Speaking of, while the engine may be slightly less pretty than its predecessors, the monster variety on offer here isn't half bad. Even a few really weird enemies were included, which is always welcome. My personal favorite and shoutout are the ogre slugs. I don't know what the deep lore for these things is and why they exist. Maybe I don't want to. I'm imagining an ogre doing terrible things to a poor slug. Truly upsetting stuff. In addition to the graphical tweaks, the new engine allowed for characters in the middle rank to attack in melee with pole arms. In the original games, only the front two characters could use melee at all, with the rear four relegated to ranged and spells only. It's a nice change, as something that did carry over into this version is the need to pick up every single arrow you fire. Add in that bows don't even do much damage, and my bow-wielding thief has been getting a free ride the entire trilogy, as I was far too lazy to use her. Not anymore. Eye Patch has been equipped with a long stick and will be poking her way to victory. She is still easily my least useful party member. Once again, as a carryover from 2, there is nothing you can pick with the lockpicks, making me wonder what the point of having them even is. There are also a handful of throwing hammers tossed in. Really cool, as unlike the bows, the hammers would return automatically. My D&D nerd reference of the video is that the hammers made me feel like Wolfgar, recalling his mighty hammer, Aegis Fang. Aegis Fang! Let's talk spells. Just like the first two games, we're operating off AD&D, or 2nd edition D&D if you prefer. You had two schools of magic, Wizard and Priest. Wizard spells generally focused on damage, whereas Priest generally focused on healing and buffing, with a couple exceptions. The magic system works great. Damage spells are largely all the same, with higher level stuff typically doing more damage, and some creatures being immune or weak based on the type of damage you're doing. Low-level damage spells remain useful throughout the entire game. There were a ton of buffs, but I found most to be largely unnecessary, right up until they weren't. In terms of combat buffs like haste and armor spells, they just sort of felt pointless, as this game is wildly easier than the second game. More on that in a minute. But suffice to say, there really wasn't much need to make yourself stronger in most cases. Detect Invisibility is an early spell that is only useful on one enemy the entire game. Same with Negative Plane Protection. Only one enemy it would ever matter against. However, there were other spells that were outright required for you to finish the game. There's a part early on where you get trapped in a small room, and the only way out is to have a cleric cast Prayer. At another point, you need to spend an entire level underwater. If you don't have a wizard with the Breathe Water spell, that's it. You lose.
I am under the water. Please help me.
I don't hate the idea of incorporating mandatory status spells into the game, but considering how much player agency there is here to make your own party, it's very possible you could have a party without these critical roles filled. It would be a real shame if you were doing a challenge run of some sort just to find you can't progress because your party lacks a spellcaster. It is true there are recruitable companions throughout the game, and they could fill these roles, but if you choose not to take them, they won't wait for you. They just vanish. It's very possible to softlock your game without the right party composition. It's not really a huge deal. 90% of parties will have both casters, but it just feels like an oversight in a genre focused on building unique parties. Another problem with the magic system is that there are tons of high-level spells included that your average player will never get access to. For those that are unaware, you learn new spells by finding them on a scroll and scribing them. You can even learn spells that you technically can't cast yet. About midway through the game, you start finding boatloads of level 8 and 9 spells. I never really got to use any of them, with the rare exception of those I found more than once and could cast directly from the scroll. For reference, you need a 17th level wizard to cast level 9 spells. I finished the game with my wizard at level 12. I didn't even get 7th level spells. And I have an imported party, which starts at a higher level. I can't imagine anyone would be able to farm out that many levels. Like, I only gained 1 level on my wizard this entire game. I would need to do 5 more, each more difficult to achieve than the last. The game just doesn't have enough content to allow you to ever reach that point unless you want to spend longer farming than it would take for you to just play through the game. It's a real shame too, because there's some spells I really wanted to try. Bigsby's Clenched Fist just sounds awesome. Related, this game is extremely short, even compared to others in the series. I finished it in under 10 hours on a blind playthrough. And not only is it short, like I mentioned, it is significantly easier. When compared to 2, where there's special strategies for different monsters, here almost everything was just point at it and press attack. Rarely there would be a monster with a unique effect that required a bit of thought, but 80% of the mobs are just trash with no special input needed. I found myself longing for that tactical and complex combat from Eye of the Beholder 2. There are even 2 bosses in this title, and both are a massive letdown compared to the first games. There are puzzles interspersed throughout the game as well, but nothing felt particularly interesting outside a few that I'll touch on in the story section. Overall, the gameplay here is far from bad. It's actually quite enjoyable through most of the game, but it's just not that great leap forward that the second game took from the first. The story's not bad though. This game makes the bold choice to use the same opening as the second game, but I can forgive it as it was a really atmospheric way to start a game. The story begins with us outside on a rainy Waterdeep night. Our band of adventurers from the first game are inside the tavern, keeping warm and enjoying their hero status. Suddenly, a man in a black robe arrives seeking our help. He tells us of the ancient city of Drannor, and how it's ruled by an evil lich who poses a great threat to the city and perhaps the whole world. We agree to help, and the man teleports us away to start the quest. It's pretty cliche and a predictable way to kick things off, but it's mostly fine. It does feel like a downgrade from the start of the second game. If you'll recall, that quest was started by a summon from the legendary Kelvin Blackstaff, chosen of Mystra, and ended with the slaying of a red dragon. You would think our party would have a bit more clout by now, and not just be picking up quests from randoms in the tavern. Times are tough for everyone, I guess. From here, the game immediately starts. You're in a graveyard surrounded by woods, and before you can really get your bearings, you'll have ghosts bearing down on you. They aren't much of a threat, but do give that early game urgency to remind you that the kid gloves should be off. This is a big boy quest now. A few steps in, we encounter a group of knights. The Knights of Drannor, to be exact. Apparently they're trying to stop looters from entering the city that's been completely overrun with undead and demons of all sorts. Like, should they not be trying to reclaim their city instead of stopping us? Random people in the graveyard? We explain that we're here to stop the evil that took the city, and they let us go. Not one of the knights offers to help us. Garbage knights, as far as I'm concerned. We explore the surrounding area and find a mausoleum. I wanted to finish exploring the surrounding environs first, though. We find a secret path into the deeper wilderness behind some cuttable trees. The pixel art and text leading into this next area are awesome. Probably some of my favorite in the entire game. A long abandoned road. nearly overgrown with vegetation, winds its way deeper into the forest. A sundered gate hangs ajar by one hinge, as if snapped by some creature of monstrous strength or unfathomable terror. Will you follow this trail? Absolute top-tier DMing. 10 out of 10 vibe check. Sadly, this next part takes me out of the action a bit. The game still has its copy protections intact, and this is where it chooses to implement them. For those not aware, these older DOS games tended to keep themselves secure by forcing you to find a specific word or phrase from the manual to prove that you didn't illegally copy the game. It's kind of pointless, as you could just copy the manual too, but regardless, this relic of the past did give me a bit of a headache. I do have the manual, as this is a legit copy, but entering the requested word doesn't work and just drops you to the desktop. Here's a tip I learned so you don't have to. Put a space before typing the requested word. I don't know why it needs a leading space, but it does. Thankfully, this only needs to be done once for the whole game. The deeper woods start out with a crawling maze. It's not too bad with our auto map, but I imagine it would have been confusing without it. At the end, we get a torch that can be used to move uncuttable trees that we'll encounter through these much spookier woodlands. Not long into the place, we find Delmare Rallyhorn. He is also seeking evil, and specifically, a mystical sword called Hauzimmer? Am I pronouncing that right? Who knows? I almost don't take him because his name is so stupid, but we do have 2 open spots and let him tag along. He actually turns out to be one of the most interesting companions in any of these games. When he takes damage, he becomes a were-tiger, which is super cool and I love it, but he has a few huge downsides. Firstly, while he is super strong in tiger form with dual claw attacks, his hands count as normal weapons, which to you non-D&D nerds means he can't hit most higher level monsters, as they require magical weapons to hit. So probably half the monsters in this game are completely immune to being hit by him at all. His second issue is that you can't force him to transform. You just need to hope something hits him to trigger it. And when he's waiting to be hit, he just needs to stand there punching unarmed. You can equip him with a weapon, but he'll drop it on the ground as soon as he transforms. And it's tedious to keep having him re-equip it. Anyhow, he still gets points for being a cool cat. At the end of this forest is another maze, and at the end of that is a spectral mage/druid blocking the way forward. He's mad at us for attacking the trees, and will only let us by if we solve a puzzle. He has a bunch of books, and you need to pick the book that corresponds to the party member he's speaking with. My mage was speaking, so I picked the arcane tome. Super easy riddle. He also mentions a captain of the guard that was killed defending the city, and that he was interred in a nearby mausoleum. Now, I think you could skip this part, but I decided to go back and check out the mausoleum from earlier before proceeding into the city. I am fairly certain this is the only optional content in the entire game. The dungeon isn't bad. Filled to the rim with undead, and the overarching goal is to explore the 4 wings, set the switches down, and then enter the heart of the crypt. The central area of the mausoleum is filled with shadow monsters, and more concerningly, wights.
Do they have white privilege?
These guys are weak, but can reduce your character's level if hit. There is a rod of restoration you can assemble at the end to restore those lost levels, but it's definitely smarter to just avoid losing the levels in the first place. Take these guys out from a range. At the end of the place, we meet the ghost of the guard, who thinks he's still alive. If we present him with a nameplate from his own grave, he realizes he died defending the city, and gives us an amulet that will allow us safe passage through the trees. You know, the trees that we already cut down. Oops, let's go visit the city. Emerging from the woods into the city proper is once again punctuated with great pixel art and ambience. And this next area is probably my favorite. The city is in ruins, a huge open area filled with destroyed buildings, hidden magics, and horrendous creatures. We also find Rex here, a lizard man cleric. He will join your party if you like, and though Cordio is just fine clericing on his own, I can't resist a good beast race, so I kick the dwarf thief out of my party. I didn't mention that I found a dwarf thief earlier, because criminals don't deserve to be introduced. He's gone now anyway. Finishing up the ruins, we can enter a destroyed mage's tower. As good a place as any to search for ancient evil. It's not a bad dungeon, and it's absolutely massive. It has several distinct sections, from mazes, to illusory walls, to teleporters, and tons of stone golems. There are even water weirds. The big set piece of the place is an underwater maze. It's mostly not too bad until the final stretch. There is a significant anti-magic zone you need to get through while underwater, which means you can't cast underwater breathing. The way drowning in this game works is that if you don't have water breathing on, you take damage each time you move. And with no way to heal, it's pretty well guaranteed most of your party will die trying to get through this. It's really going to be trial and error to find the most direct route before everyone dies. You better hope someone with raised dead survives. There is no other way to bring your party members back. And if anyone happens to be an elf and dies, that's it. They're just gone unless you can get your cleric to max level for resurrection. It's not terrible, but definitely one of the more frustrating areas of the game. Emerging from the waves, we have a quick math-based puzzle, then get teleported to meet the Lich in charge. He spouts off about how we know not what we do or some such noise, then combat starts. As far as boss fights go, this one is pretty unremarkable. He has a bunch of mirror images and casts spells, but is super squishy and will die unbelievably fast. As soon as the Lich hits the ground, the robed figure that sent us on this quest appears and snags the Lich's book. Turns out that he was a dark god all along, and just recruited us to take care of the Lich so he could finally conquer the city in its entirety. The Lich only became a Lich to defend Drannor. He was actually a good guy. Feels like this whole thing could have been avoided if he didn't just attack us on sight. Anyhow, for the last push, we need to get to the heart of the Temple of Lathander and disrupt the Dark God's ritual. There's another great city section here, and then we're on our way into the temple. This last bit is pretty fun, but again, the outdoor spaces are where this game shines the most. The dungeon here is varied, but drags a bit and is very similar to the Mage's Tower, just with different enemies. Notably, the blob enemies here will destroy your weapons if you attack them outright. Use magic. Or if you're really dedicated and grinded out a lot of levels, you can try Mordenkainen's sword. Each floor of this place you'll need to conduct rites and rituals to cleanse the evil and empower the god Lathander. On the very first floor we find a wounded paladin. You can heal her up and have her join your party if you wish. I decided to replace the Tiger Man with her, as to be honest he had been useless for some time. As much as I vibe with the Were-Tiger, he can't hit anything. Some standout set pieces as we ascend include a trap maze where you wander for eternity, a cursed floor that doesn't allow rest, relighting sacred flames, and finally, meeting God and taking his sword. It's always a sword in these games. On the final floor, we meet the Dark God again. As far as final fights go, this one is pretty pitiful, especially when compared to the last two games. I remember facing the Beholder in the first game, barely getting him into the spike trap before he could obliterate my party. I remember Drannor, the more straightforward fight where taking a single hit was likely to wipe out your party. And then there's this guy, unnamed Dark God, who you just beat on a couple of times to win. It's a real downgrade. You can even use a nearby time stop scroll on him. And as much as it's sort of fun to troll him that way, it absolutely trivializes the fight. Once he dies, Lathander shows up, says we're great, and sends us on our way. As we leave the city, mission complete, the Knights of Drannor appear and offer us membership. I mean, their entire order of knights couldn't do what my small party did. Seems like they should be asking to join me, not the other way around. Garbage knight order and arrogant to boot. Take your invitation and shove it up your ass. So, the common opinion you see is that this was a poor way to finish off a series that had a massive impact on the dungeon crawling scene, and sadly, I sort of have to agree. The graphics were a downgrade. The gameplay, while slightly improved in some respects, suffered from a real lack of complexity that was found in the second entry. Ironically, I would say that the gameplay in this title is most similar to the first game, where things felt more tank and spank. Unfortunately, this is a game that released years later, and after a remarkable sequel, so it's hard not to see a massive downgrade here. The spellbook was filled out, but the game was so short that you never got to really develop your characters to use those fancy new spells. I don't even know if it would be physically possible without dozens of hours of farming. This feels like something even the barest playtesting should have picked up on. The story, while never particularly rich in this series, felt especially generic here. There was that unexpected twist of the Lich being a good guy in the middle, but that doesn't compare to the revelation that Drannor was a dragon in the second entry, or that Waterdeep is being threatened by a beholder cult in the first game. You compare the short production cycle of 1 to 2, where there were massive improvements. Then you see this game that had longer in the development cycle, but somehow went in reverse. In all honesty, this game feels a lot more like an expansion pack, or DLC for you youngins, than an actual fully fleshed out gaming experience. In full objectivity, this isn't a bad game, not by a long shot. The base rule set is still solid, the visuals are fine, and the overall gameplay feels enjoyable. It's just sadly not up to the reputation set by its predecessors. Were this a standalone game, I would have far less complaints. But really, if you liked the series, and you have played the prior 2 games, this one is still probably worth playing through to finish out the saga. Just don't expect the heights that Legend of Darkmoon achieved, and you'll probably have a lot of fun. After all, the beauty of any media is really in the eye of the beholder.
Oh my god, you're so lame.
See you in the next video.